Okay, so I was just saying, starting chapter 4, 3 sections. This is just going to extend from what we've learned already. Okay, we're just extending from what we learned in 3.5 and 3.6. So 3.5, we learned synthetic division and long division, and then 3.6, we factored fully. Okay, so now after doing that, now we're looking at the zeros. Okay, so taking one step further and finding the zeros. Okay, what are zeros again? What are zeros again? X-intercepts, good. So we're looking for x-intercepts. Okay, so if we're looking for x-intercepts, we want to get something into factored form. If we have it in factored form, then it's easy to determine the zeros. Okay, so that's why we learned factoring last chapter. Okay, so factoring, so once we want to go from standard form into factored form. Okay, so to do that, we factor. All right, so now we're going to do something a little bit more challenging. We're going to add in powers of 4s. Okay, actually, were there some powers of 4s? 3.6? I think there was, yes. Okay, so we're just going to kind of go through this once again. The first step to factoring always is what? First step, Artemis. Look for the greatest common factor always. Please do that. Very often it's missed, or very easy to miss it. Okay, so number 1, question number, or 1A, determine the zeros. Do we have a GCF, greatest common factor? So greatest common factor, Caitlin?
3x.
3x, so we're gonna factor out a 3x first. So we're gonna factor out a 3x from each of them. When we say factor out, we mean divide. So 3x cubed divided by 3x is just x squared. Okay, negative 39x squared. Factor out of 3, it's negative 13x. So we factor out 3x. So divide by 3 and then also reduce the x's, right? And then lastly, just 22. Okay, so now we got into the form of a quadratic. So we have an x squared minus 13x plus 22. This is considered a simple trinomial. Okay, what's the difference between a simple trinomial and a complex trinomial? What's the difference? Simple trinomial, so this is a trinomial, 3 terms. What's the difference between simple and complex? One difference. Kaylin?
Complex has a coefficient on the x.
Of the x squared.
Yeah.
Okay, so complex, on the x squared, there's a coefficient, so there'd be a number in front of here. Okay, this one does not, so it's simple. So all we have to do now is find out 2 numbers that multiply to 22 and add up to negative 13. So 2 numbers that add up to multiply to positive 22 and add up to negative 13. What would those 2 be, Artemis?
Negative 11 and negative 2.
Good, so negative 11 and negative 2. Okay, so we factored fully, and we factored because we're looking for the zeros. Okay, so what are the zeros here? Michael?
11 and 2.
Okay, close. You're correct. What's the last one? Let's go. Clara?
0.
0. Good. So this one here is 0. Okay, so whenever you have a letter or a term in front of the bracket, there's an X there. This one's 0. Okay, Y. So 11, 2, and 0. So you're supposed to set, remember to find it out, you set it equal to 0. Remember that? So like x minus 11 equals 0, and then you isolate, so plus 11, so x equals 11, so that's why that's one's 11. That's why it's the opposite. Okay, likewise, if you did it for 3x equals 0, and then divide by 3. So you get x equals 0 divided by 3 is 0. Okay, so that's why the x-intercept is 0 for that one. Okay, so those are zeros, 0 to 11. I think tomorrow we get into graphing it afterwards. Okay, moving on to the next one. Moving on to the next one. Okay, 2x to the power 4, 9x cubed plus 8x squared minus 9x minus 10. Okay, first step, always looking for a GCF, greatest common factor. Is there one? Is there a greatest common factor?
No.
No, there's not. Okay, this one does not have a letter, so it doesn't have an x, so there's no x, and there's no number that goes into all of these except for 1. Okay, so can't do greatest common factor, so we have to look to divide. How many questions do I have here? Okay, so I'm gonna do one. I'll do one using long division, and I'll do one using synthetic. Okay. So this one I'll do long division. Because on a test I will ask you guys to do synthetic and a long division, so you have to make sure you know both. Okay, so let's do long division first. But before I do long division, I have to come up with a divisor. Okay, so how do we find a divisor again? How do we find a divisor? I know you guys weren't in class when I taught it. That was the other class, right? How do we find a divisor? Okay, so we have to look at factors of the number here. So we have to look at numbers that go into 10. Okay, what are my options for numbers that go into 10? Divide into 10 nicely. What are my options? Nor?
1, 2, 5, and
1, 2, 5, and 10. Good. Okay, so 1 times 10 is 10, and 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, and then for each of them, it can be plus or minus. Okay, so plus or minus 1, plus or minus 10, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 5. Okay, so now we have to figure out which ones are factors. And it's a power of 4, so chances are we're going to have 4 of them. We're going to have 4 factors. Okay, so we have 2, 4, 6, 8 options. So I'm just going to go, I have it in my notes already. So I just don't want to do all the trial and error right now. I have 1. 1 works. So if you substitute 1 into the equation, you're going to get the answer 0. I'm just going to show you quickly. So 2 times 1 to the power 4, plus 9 times 1 power 3, 8 times 1 power 2, minus 9 times 1 minus 10. Okay, I always starts with positive 1, then negative 1, positive 2, negative 2. So that gives me 2 plus 9 plus 8 minus 9 minus 10. So 11 and 8 is 19, minus 9 is 10, minus 10 is 0. Okay, so we know positive 1 is a factor. Going to work over here. Okay, so we're doing long division. So if we were to plug 1 into the, we know that positive 1 is a factor, so it would be x minus 1. So we're going to do x minus 1 into 2x4 plus 9x cubed, 8x squared minus 9x minus 10. was you guys in class? I thought it's you, right? Yes, okay. Okay, so let's start long division. So what can I multiply the x by to get to 2x to the power of 4?
2x cubed.
2x cubed. So 2x cubed. So we get 2x to the power of 4 minus 2x cubed. Then we subtract 9 minus a negative 2 becomes 9 plus 2. So we get 11x cubed. So remember, multiply, subtract, carry down. Multiply, subtract, carry down. So now we carry down our 8x squared. Okay, well, now what multiplies to x to get to, sorry, what do we multiply x by to get to 11x cubed? Artemis? 11x squared, good, so plus 11x squared. So 11x cubed minus 11x squared. Subtract. Just cross off. 8 minus a negative 11 becomes 8 plus 11 is 19x squared. Carry down a negative 9. Probably see why people like synthetic better. It's much faster. This is longer. Okay, second last one. Now we multiply by 19x. So x times 19x will give me a 19x squared. X times negative 1 is negative 19. Obviously, when we get to the last one, it should come to 0. If it doesn't go to 0, then we made a mistake somewhere, either with the divisor or in our division. Cross this, negative 9 minus a negative 19, which is negative 9 plus 19 gives me positive 10x. Carry down our negative 10. What do we multiply this by to get to 10x? 10. Okay, so they both cross off and we get a remainder of 0. Okay, so what that means is now we have x minus 1 as one of our divisors, so one of our factors. Okay, and now after we factor out an x minus 1 from our quartic function, we are left with 2x cubed plus 11x squared plus 19x plus 10. Okay, so I put this in brackets, x minus 1, and then we have this as well. Okay, so those are 2 brackets. Now what? Still want to find the zeros. still left with a cubic function, right? Suggestions? We now have to find another factor. Okay, so we have to find another factor of 10. Okay, you have it, Nora?
Would you have to do long division again?
Yes. Okay, so we have to find, so we have to do long division, so we have to find another divisor. Okay, by using a factor of 10. So I did this already, and I got the answer of -1. So if I plug in -1 here, I plug in -1, I still get the answer of 0. Okay, so we're going to do long division now with x plus 1. Okay, if I plug in x minus 1, it's x plus 1 here. Okay, I'm just going to do this one quickly. So 2x squared, 2x cubed plus 2x squared, 11 minus 2 is 9x squared, carry down a 19x. Now we'll multiply x by to get to 9x squared is 9x. Minus 9 is 10x. Bring down our 10. And lastly, we multiply x by 10 to get to 10x. If I gave you a question like this on the test, it'd probably be like a 6-mark question. Like there's so many steps to it. 2 marks, probably 2 marks, and then our last step, 2 marks. Just give you guys a minute to get caught up. Okay, we caught up? Okay, so again, when we factor out an x plus 1 from the cubic function, we're left with the x squared function. So we factor out an x minus 1 from the original. Then we factor out an x plus 1 from the cubic function. So now we're left with the quadratic. So 2x squared plus 9x plus 10. Okay, so we have 2 factors. Now we have our quadratic. We don't have to do the long division anymore. If you want to, you can. You can still go, maybe you're not very good at doing the factoring of trinomials. If you want to find another factor and do the long division again, or synthetic division, you can. Okay, it's just very time consuming. Okay, so we have here a simple trinomial or a complex? Simple or complex?
Complex.
Complex because we have the 2 in front of the x squared. So we can no longer do 2 numbers that multiply to 10 and add up to 9. If Doesn't work. Okay, because we have a number in front of the x squared. We have a coefficient. So here on factoring, I like one method. There's probably about 4 different ways to factor quadratics. Depending on what teacher you had, you probably learned a different, or you learned one way over another. Okay, can you guys tell me what methods you learned for factoring? I don't know if there's any rules. What did you learn? Grade 10, you should probably learn one way. Grade 11, maybe another way. You don't know what it's called, but you do it. That's how it is, Mike? Yeah. Okay. Anyone learn in my old school, they call it SPI, sum product integer. And in my old school, called it PSI, product sum integer. Did you guys do that? No? So it's, you multiply these two numbers together to get your product, and then you have to add up to 9? No? You guys do a cross method? Who has no idea what they did? Yeah, 1, okay, 2, 3, 4, okay. You guys don't remember? Okay, so I'm gonna show you the method I do. The method I do works for every type of factoring. If I have a group, if I have 4 terms, if I have 3 terms, if I have a difference of squares, my factoring works for all of them. So when I teach grade 10, I teach one way to factor, and it covers every single one. Okay, often teachers teach you 3 different ways. So difference of squares, they'll teach you one way. Perfect trinomials, they'll teach you a different way. And then trinomials, they'll teach you a 3rd way. And it gets confusing as hell. Okay, so this is my method. It might be confusing to you at first, if you choose to use it. If you're comfortable with your own method, what you've learned in the past, use it. Okay, you don't have to use mine. I know all of them. I've seen them all. Okay, so on the test, I'll know how to follow it. Okay, so this is how mine works. I break down the first term, and then I break down the last term. Okay? When I mean break down, I break it into multiples. So what 2 things can multiply to 2x squared? Give me two numbers that are going to multiply to 2.
2x and x.
Okay, good. So 2 will break down into 2 and 1, and we have an x squared, so it's x and x. So 2x times 1x will get you 2x squared. So this is going to be the beginning of my next brackets. Okay? Now 2 numbers that multiply to 10. You have 2 options here. Pick one of them. Artemis? 5 and 2. Okay? So we're going to do 5 and 2. Now we do something, we call it, when I was in grade 10, my teacher called it cross voodoo. I don't know why, but I'll never forget it. He called it cross voodoo. And all you're doing is cross multiplying. So you're gonna cross multiply here and cross multiply here. Okay, don't copy anything else. 1x times 5 is 5x. 2x times 2 is 4x. If I add these 2 terms together, and it equals the middle term, then this is my brackets. Okay? So does 5x plus 4x equal the middle term?
Yeah.
Yes, so this works. So 2x plus 5 is one bracket, x plus 2 is my next bracket. So my final answer, x minus 1, x plus 1, 2x plus 5, and x plus 2.
So if it doesn't add up to 9, do you just rearrange?
You figure it out. Like for instance, if you put 2 here and 5 here, you would have got 11x. So then you would have to switch it. It is a little bit of trial and error, but once you get good at it, it's just like it comes very fast. And hopefully you should have learned this in grade 11, because in grade 11 you have all those. You guys remember those? You have to factor all the fractions, and then you got to cross them all off. If you were doing like decomposition or PSI, it would have took you forever. This goes very fast. Okay? This is the quickest method. But if you're comfortable with the method that you already know, please use it. Okay, so our very, very last step is we're asking for the zeros. So what are my zeros? Artemis?
1, -1, -5/2, and -2.
Okay, good. So I'm just leaving the middle one for a second. So we have 1, -1, -2. Okay? How do we get this one? Why is this -5/2 again? Okay?
Well, we just have to isolate that. Like,
Yeah, so you make it equal to 0 again. The quick way is to do it. It's this number divided by this number. And then change it to the opposite sign. Just like we did opposite signs for these ones. So it's a +5, so it comes in -5, and then divide by 2. Or make it equal to 0. 2x plus 5 equals 0. Isolate. So we have 2x equals -5. Divide by 2 is -5/2. Okay, shortcut, take the second term, change the operation, divide by the first term, and that's good. Okay, that was a long